I'm Magnus Holt. I'm 72 years old, and if there is one thing a lifetime of hunting financial criminals has taught me, it's that blood isn't thicker than water. It's just harder to clean up. I spent 40 years working for the Treasury Department, putting away men who thought they owned the world. But my biggest case wasn't a cartel boss or a corrupt senator. It was the man sitting across from me at Christmas dinner. I gave my daughter and her husband $150,000 in bailouts over the years, a paid-off education, and my unconditional trust. In return, they forged my signature to steal the only thing I have left, my apartment. They looked at my gray hair and my cheap sedan and saw a helpless victim. They saw a senile old man they could erase to cover their debts. They didn't know that I still have the keys to the heavy archives. They didn't know that while they were toasting to my funeral, I was already digging their graves. By tomorrow morning, their luxury car will be government property, their accounts will be frozen, and I will be the one pouring the champagne. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. The tires of my 2012 sedan crunched over the gravel of the driveway, a sound that seemed offensively loud in this neighborhood of silent electric luxury. I looked up at the house. It wasn't a home. It was a statement. A sprawling, neo-modern monstrosity of glass and steel that looked less like a place to raise a family and more like a corporate headquarters for a company that didn't actually produce anything. It was snowing, a light dusting that should have been picturesque. But under the harsh, stadium-style security lights illuminating the lawn, the snow looked like ash. I checked my watch. 7:00 p.m., right on time. I am always on time. It's a habit from a life where being late meant a suspect walked or a witness died. I killed the engine and sat for a moment, letting the silence of the car settle around me. My hands, spotted with age but still steady, rested on the steering wheel. I took a breath. This was the performance. This was the mask. Tonight, I had to be Magnus the retiree, the grandfatherly figure, the harmless old relic. I stepped out into the biting cold. The wind cut through my wool coat, a coat I'd bought 20 years ago, back when quality meant something. I walked toward the front door, passing the fleet of vehicles parked in the circle. There was Alara's white Rover, pristine and terrifyingly expensive, and next to it, something new. A black beast of a machine. A Cadillac Escalade, the newest model, sitting on rims that probably cost more than my first year's salary at the bureau. I paused, my eyes narrowing instinctively. I walked around the back of the Escalade. No license plates yet, just the dealer tag. "Thatcher," I whispered, my breath pluming in the air. "You are digging a hole, and you just bought a very expensive shovel." I reached the massive front door. It was made of dark wood, heavy and imposing, adorned with a Christmas wreath that was so large it looked aggressive. I rang the bell. I could hear the chimes echo inside, followed by the muffled thump of bass-heavy music. I waited. I rang again. Finally, the door swung open. The heat from inside rushed out to meet me, carrying the scent of expensive perfume, pine needles, and something sharper: ambition. "Dad!" Alara stood there. She was wearing a silver dress that shimmered like fish scales. She looked beautiful, but thin. Too thin. Her smile was bright, practiced, and didn't reach her eyes. "You made it! We thought... Well, with the snow, we thought you might stay in the city." "The roads are fine, Alara," I said, stepping inside. "I may be old, but I can still drive in a dusting." "Oh, stop!" she laughed, a brittle sound. She kissed my cheek. Her skin was cold. "Come in, come in. Everyone is in the great room. Thatcher is just opening the good wine." I handed her my coat. She took it with 2 fingers, as if the wool might be contagious, and handed it off to a catering server who was passing by with a tray of empty glasses. "Go on in," she urged, guiding me toward the noise. "I just need to check on the hors d'oeuvres." I walked down the hallway. The walls were lined with abstract art, splashes of red and black that looked violent. I reached the archway to the great room. It was packed. There were maybe 50 people, a sea of black velvet, diamonds, and tailored suits. I recognized none of them. These weren't friends. They were contacts. They were leverage. I moved to the edge of the room, finding a spot near a potted fern that looked plastic, but was likely imported and very real. I watched. It's what I do. I watch patterns. I watch hands. I watch eyes. Thatcher Gray was in the center of the room, holding court. He was wearing a velvet blazer in a shade of deep burgundy that made him look like a Vegas magician. He was 40 years old, but he had the energy of a 20-year-old fraternity pledge who had just found his father's credit card. He was laughing, his head thrown back, his teeth gleaming white in the chandelier light. He was holding a crystal flute of champagne. He raised it high, tapping it with a silver spoon. The sharp ting, ting, ting cut through the chatter. The room quieted down, faces turning toward him like flowers toward a toxic sun. "Everybody, everybody, listen up!" Thatcher boomed. His voice was thick, slurry. He was drunk. Not happy drunk, arrogant drunk. "I want to propose a toast." Ilara appeared at his side, slipping her arm through his. She looked up at him with an expression that I can only describe as terrified adoration. "To this year," Thatcher shouted, swaying slightly. "To the risks we took. To the empire we are building." "Here, here!" a few voices shouted from the crowd. "And," Thatcher continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that carried across the silent room, "to the future, a future that is finally clean." He looked down at Ilara. He smiled, but it wasn't a smile of love. It was a smile of possession. "To a future without baggage," he said, his eyes scanning the room until they landed for a split second on me. "To cutting the dead weight so the balloon can rise." The room hesitated. It was an odd toast. Too aggressive. Too personal. Then Thatcher laughed. "I mean, seriously, to a future with no more complications." "No more complications," someone echoed. Thatcher looked at Ilara. "Right, baby? No more old furniture cluttering up the house?" It was a metaphor, but it wasn't subtle. I was the old furniture. I was the baggage. I was the complication. I watched my daughter. I waited for her to stiffen. I waited for her to pull her arm away. I waited for her to defend the father who had paid for her braces, her college, her wedding, her mistakes. Ilara looked at the floor. Then she looked up at Thatcher, and she giggled. It wasn't a nervous laugh. It was a complicit little titter. She squeezed his arm. "Oh, Thatcher, be nice," she said, but she was smiling. She was with him. She had chosen her side. That giggle hit me harder than a bullet. I felt a physical pain in the center of my chest. The last thread of hope I had been holding on to, the idea that she was a victim, that she was being manipulated, snapped. She wasn't a victim. She was a volunteer. I didn't storm in. I didn't throw my drink. I stepped back into the shadows of the hallway. I turned around and walked back to the foyer. The catering server was there. "Leaving so soon, sir?" he asked, surprised. "Yes," I said, taking my coat from the rack myself. I seemed to be cluttering up the house. I walked out into the cold. The snow was falling harder now. I got into my car. I didn't look back at the house. I didn't look at the Escalade. I just drove. The sadness was gone. The grief was gone. All that was left was the cold, gray machinery of the hunt. My apartment is in the city, a pre-war building with thick brick walls and radiators that clank like dying engines. It is paid for. It is mine. I unlocked the door and stepped into the quiet. It smelled of lemon oil and old books. I hung my coat on the rack. I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. My hand was steady. I drank it in one long gulp. Then I went to the bedroom. I pushed the dresser aside. Behind it, set into the wall, was a safe. Not a digital hotel safe, but a heavy steel box installed in 1985. I spun the dial. Left to 40. Right to 12. Left to 72. The lock clicked. The heavy door swung open. Inside, there was no money. There was no jewelry. There was a stack of files, a leather holster, and a Glock 19 that had been cleaned and oiled on the first Sunday of every month for 15 years. I took out the gun. I checked the chamber. Empty. I loaded a magazine. I placed the gun on the bed. Then I reached into the back of the safe and pulled out a small black pouch. Inside were 3 burner phones and a laptop that looked like a brick. It was a Panasonic Toughbook, air-gapped, running an operating system that didn't exist on the commercial market. I carried the equipment to the dining table. I sat down. I was no longer Magnus the father. I was Agent Holt. I opened the laptop. The screen glowed blue. I didn't log into the internet. I logged into the shadows. I needed to know who Thatcher Gray really was. I knew he was a failure. I knew he was a gambler. But the toast. No more complications. That wasn't the talk of a man who was winning. That was the talk of a man who was desperate to clear the board. He had asked me for $150,000 last week. He said it was for a tech startup. I had said no. I told him I didn't have that kind of liquid cash. He hadn't argued. He had just smiled that oily smile and said, "We'll figure it out, Magnus. We always do." Now I knew what figuring it out meant. I picked up one of the burner phones. I dialed a number from memory. It rang 4 times. "Yeah?" a voice answered. Grating, tired, surrounded by the hum of server fans. "Bram," I said. "It's Holt." Silence on the line. Then a sigh. "Magnus, it's Christmas Eve. Tell me you're calling to wish me tidings of comfort and joy." "I need a run," I said. "Full financial autopsy. Assets, liabilities, hidden accounts, offshore holdings. I need it deep, and I need it now." "Who's the target?" Bram asked, the tiredness vanishing, replaced by professional curiosity. "Thatcher Gray," I said. "My son-in-law." "Ouch," Bram said. "Trouble in paradise?" "He's driving a $100,000 car and asking me for loans," I said. "He's toasting to my funeral. I want to know who owns him." "Give me an hour," Bram said. "But Magnus, if this guy is into what I think he's into, you might not like what I find." "I don't need to like it, Bram," I said. "I just need to use it." The hour passed slowly. I sat in the dark, watching the snow fall past the streetlights outside my window. I cleaned the Glock again, purely for the tactile sensation of steel and oil. It focused me. The burner phone buzzed. A text message. A secure link. I opened it on the Toughbook. Bram was good. He was better than good. The screen filled with data streams, bank logs, and credit reports. "Holy hell," I whispered. Thatcher wasn't just broke. He was a financial crater. Credit score 420, Outstanding credit card debt, $185,000. Personal loans, $90,000. Mortgage status, 90 days past due. Notice of default recorded. He was drowning. He was clinically dead, financially speaking. But then, I scrolled down to the assets. Vehicle registration, 2025 Cadillac Escalade. Purchased 3 days ago. Method of payment, cash, full amount, $112,000. How? I asked the screen. How does a man who can't pay his mortgage drop $100,000 cash on a truck? I kept scrolling. Bram had flagged a series of transactions. Look at the flow, I muttered. There were deposits entering a shell company account registered to Thatcher called Grey Horizons LLC. The deposits were irregular. $9,500, $9,800, $9,000, always just under the $10,000 federal reporting threshold. Structuring, smurfing. This was money laundering 101. But where was it going? The money came in, sat for 24 hours, and then was wired out to a corporate entity. Argentum Capital. I recognized the name. Argentum Capital wasn't a bank. It was a hard money lender, a predator that offered loans to people who had been rejected by every legitimate institution on earth. They charged 25% interest and demanded collateral that outweighed the loan by triple. Why was he wiring money to them? Was he paying off a loan? I picked up the phone. Bram, walk me through it. It's ugly, Magnus, Bram said. He's washing cash. The structuring is obvious. But here's the kicker. He's not just washing it. He's skimming. Explain. The inputs into his shell company total $300,000 over the last 3 months, Bram said. The wires out to Argentum only total $200,000. There is $100,000 missing. The Escalade, I said. Exactly, Bram said. He's taking the principal. He's supposed to be moving the money for someone, but he's spending it. He's stealing from the wash. Who is he washing for? I asked. I can't see that far, Bram said. The source of the cash is layered. Shell companies inside shell companies. But Magnus, people who structure cash like that, they aren't accountants. They're organized. If he's stealing from them, he's a dead man walking, I finished. There's one more thing, Bram said, his voice hesitating. I found a pending application at Argentum Capital. A new loan? $150,000. Status: pending collateral verification. What's the collateral? I asked, though I already felt the cold creeping up my spine. A property deed, Bram said softly. 412 East 79th Street, Unit 5B, my apartment. He forged my signature, I said. The rage was so intense my vision blurred for a second. The loan hasn't funded yet, Bram said. Argentum usually requires an on-site inspection or a notarized confirmation for a third-party pledge. That's the holdup. The complication, I whispered. That's why he wants me gone. If I'm dead or incapacitated, Ilara inherits. She verifies the collateral, the loan funds. Magnus, Bram warned. These Argentum guys, they are mob adjacent. If you interfere, you're stepping in front of a moving train. I'm not stepping in front of it, Bram, I said. I'm going to derail it. I couldn't sit in the apartment. I needed eyes on the target. I needed to see the fear. I drove back to the suburbs, but I didn't go to the house. I parked 3 streets over, near a park entrance that offered a view of the main road leading out of Thatcher's subdivision. I waited. At 11:45 p.m., the black Escalade rolled out. It was moving fast. I pulled out, keeping a massive distance. The Escalade had distinctive taillights. They were easy to track. He drove toward the industrial district near the airport. This wasn't a pleasure cruise. This was business. He pulled into the lot of a 24-hour diner, a neon-lit sad place called the Night Owl. He didn't park in the front. He parked around the back, near the dumpsters. I parked in the shadows of a warehouse across the street. I used a pair of high-powered binoculars I kept in the glove box. Thatcher got out. He was still wearing the velvet blazer, but now he looked small. He was pacing, smoking a cigarette with jerky, nervous motions. A moment later, a gray sedan pulled up. A man got out. He was huge. He wore a leather jacket and had a shaved head. He didn't look like a banker. He looked like a hammer. They spoke. I couldn't hear them, but I could read the body language. The hammer was calm. Thatcher was frantic. Thatcher was waving his hands, pointing at his phone, pleading. The hammer listened, then reached out and grabbed Thatcher by the lapels of his velvet jacket. He slammed him against the side of the Escalade. Thatcher's feet almost left the ground. The hammer leaned in close, speaking into Thatcher's face. He tapped Thatcher's cheek. Tap, 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 hard enough to hurt, soft enough to be insulting. Then he released him. The hammer got back in his car and drove away. Thatcher slid down the side of his truck, putting his head in his hands. He was on a deadline. The steal had been discovered, or the debt was called in. He needed that $150,000 from Argentum, and he needed it now, which meant he needed me out of the way now. My burner phone buzzed again. It wasn't Bram. It was an unknown number. "Don't hang up," a female voice whispered. "It's Bella." Bella, Bram's junior analyst. I had helped her out of a jam with a background check years ago when she was applying for her clearance. She was brilliant, underpaid, and usually ignored by Bram. "Bella," I asked, "is this line secure?" "More secure than Bram's," she said. "I saw the query you ran. Bram stopped digging because he got scared. I didn't." "What did you find?" "The gray sedan," she said. "The one meeting your target? I tracked the plate from the traffic cams near the diner. It traces back to a logistics firm owned by Alexei Kozlov." "Kozlov?" I said, the name tasting like iron. "The Russian." "The butcher," Bella corrected. "Thatcher isn't just washing money for a local crew. He's washing for the Bratva and Magnus. I decrypted the Gray Horizons email server." "You hacked him?" "I audited him," she corrected. "I found an email from yesterday. It's from Argentum Capital. Subject, final notice. The email says that unless the collateral is verified by December 26th, the loan is denied, and the guarantors will be notified." "December 26th, I said. "That's tomorrow." "If he doesn't get that loan funded tomorrow," Bella said, "he can't pay back the money he skimmed from Kozlov. And if Kozlov finds out he was stealing, they won't just kill him," I said. "They'll hurt everyone around him to make a point. Ilara." "You need to stop this, Magnus," Bella said. "But you can't do it legally. There's no time for a warrant." "I know," I said. "Thanks, Bella. Clear your logs." "Already done. Happy hunting." I sat in the dark car, putting the pieces together. The plan was simpler and more horrific than I had imagined. Thatcher had stolen $112,000 of Kozlov's money to buy the Escalade and impress his neighbors. He planned to cover that theft by taking a $150,000 loan from Argentum, using my apartment as collateral. He would use the loan money to replace the stolen funds in the laundering account before Kozlov noticed the discrepancy. Then, he would likely flee or try to keep the juggle going. But the loan was stuck because Argentum needed verification, and I was the obstacle. If I didn't verify, the loan died. Kozlov would look at the accounts, see the missing money, and Thatcher would be skinned alive. But Kozlov wouldn't stop there. Ilara's name was on the accounts. She was the legal owner of the shell company. Kozlov would come for her. Thatcher had put my daughter in the crosshairs of a Russian mob boss to buy a Cadillac. I needed evidence. Hard, physical evidence. I needed the loan application with the forged signature, and I needed the ledger proving the skimming. I couldn't just call the police. They would arrest Ilara too. I needed to control the board. I looked at the clock. 2:15 a.m. Thatcher was home by now. Passed out drunk, likely. It was time to go to work. I drove back to the neighborhood. I parked a mile away, deep in a cul-de-sac of a housing development that was still under construction. I pulled a black ski mask from my go bag. I put on gloves. I walked through the frozen woods that bordered the wealthy estates. The snow was ankle-deep, crusted with ice. It crunched softly, but the wind was howling, masking the sound. I reached the perimeter of Thatcher's property, a 6-foot wrought iron fence. Decorative, not defensive. I scaled it easily, dropping into the meticulously landscaped garden. I moved from tree to tree, a shadow among shadows. I reached the back patio. The house was dark, save for a few safety lights near the ground. I approached the sliding glass door to the kitchen. I peered inside. The alarm panel on the wall was glowing green. Armed. Of course. But Thatcher was cheap. I knew he hadn't paid for the glass break sensors. He'd bragged about saving money on the install last Thanksgiving. They only upsell you on the glass breaks, he'd said. Motion is all you need. I took out a glass cutter, a diamond-tipped circle cutter with a suction cup. I attached it to the glass near the handle. I scored a perfect circle. I tapped it gently. Snap. I pulled the circle of glass out. I reached through the hole. I turned the latch. I slid the door open just an inch. I waited. No siren. I slipped inside. The air was warm. I moved low, below the sightline of the motion detector in the corner. I knew the layout. The home office was on the first floor, down the hall. I crawled across the kitchen floor. It was humiliating, in a way, crawling through my son-in-law's kitchen like a rat. But rats survive. I reached the hallway. No sensors here. I stood up and moved silently to the office door. It was locked. I pulled out my pick set, a tension wrench, a rake. I knelt. The lock was a joke, a standard privacy knob. I raked it twice. Click. The door opened. I stepped inside and closed the door. I pulled a pen light from my pocket, holding it in my mouth. The office was a mess. Papers everywhere. The chaos of a panicked mind. I went to the desk. I started rifling through the stacks. Unpaid bills, final notices, and then, under a pile of car magazines, I found it. A thick blue binder, embossed on the front. Argentum Capital. I opened it. There it was. The loan application. Borrower, Thatcher Gray. Co-borrower, Ilara Gray. Collateral pledger, Magnus Holt. I turned to the signature page. Magnus Holt. It was a good forgery, very good. He must have traced it from the check I gave them for their anniversary. Seeing my name there, written by his hand, violated me more than the break-in violated him. I kept looking. In the back pocket of the binder was a black ledger, handwritten, Kozlov in, 10K. Kozlov in, 10K. Out to Caddy, 112K. He had written it down. He had actually written down his crimes. The arrogance was breathtaking. I closed the binder. This was it. This was the leverage. With this, I could go to the feds. I could cut a deal for Ilara. I could bury Thatcher. I tucked the binder inside my jacket, zipping it tight against my chest. I turned to leave. I retraced my steps, down the hall, into the kitchen. Low crawl past the sensor, out the sliding door. I closed the door behind me. I took a breath of the freezing air. I had won. I turned across the lawn. Tillich. A floodlight blinded me. It hit me from the side, coming from the neighbor's yard. "Hey, you there! Freeze!" It wasn't the police. It was private security. A rent-a-cop patrol car had rolled silently up the access road between the properties. The guard was out of the car, hand on his holster, flashlight beaming into my eyes. "Hands! Let me see your hands." I cursed silently. If he searched me, he'd find the binder. Stolen documents, burglary tools. I'd be arrested. The documents would be evidence in a burglary case, not a fraud case. Thatcher would claim I planted them. The chain of custody would be ruined. I had seconds. I was standing next to a massive, overgrown rosebush, wrapped in burlap for the winter. "I said hands!" the guard yelled, advancing. I raised my hands, but as I did, I twisted my body, creating a sliver of shadow between me and the guard. With a jerk of my zipper, I pulled the binder out and shoved it deep into the center of the thorny bush. The thorns tore at my gloves, but the binder vanished into the dark tangle. "Okay, okay," I shouted, turning to face him, empty-handed. The guard rushed me. He spun me around, slamming me against the patio railing. He patted me down, rough, amateur. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. I pulled down my ski mask. I let my face show, the face of a terrified, confused old man. I was looking for my dog," I stammered. "He got out. I thought I saw him run this way. I live over on Elm." The guard hesitated. He looked at my clothes. Dark, but not tactical. He looked at my age. "In the middle of the night?" he asked, skeptical. "He's old," I said, my voice trembling. "He'll freeze." The guard lowered his flashlight slightly. He didn't find the tools. I had taped them to my inner thigh, and he hadn't checked there. He didn't find the documents because they were in the bush. "You're trespassing," he said. "This is private property." "I'm sorry," I said. I'm worried about Buster." He sighed. "Get out of here. If I see you again, I'm calling the real cops." "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." He watched me walk away. I limped a little, adding to the act. I walked all the way to the fence, climbed over, struggling for his benefit, and disappeared into the woods. I was free, but I was empty-handed. The binder, the only proof I had, was stuck in a rosebush in Thatcher's backyard, and the automated sprinklers were scheduled to run at 4:00 a.m. If that binder got soaked, the ink on the ledger would run. The evidence would be destroyed. I circled back through the woods, heart hammering. I couldn't go back immediately. The guard was sitting in his car, watching the property. I waited. 10 minutes. 20. The cold was seeping into my bones. My fingers were numb. Finally, the guard's car rolled away, heading to the next sector. I had to go back in. This time, I didn't have the luxury of stealth. I sprinted across the lawn. I reached the rose bush. I reached in. The thorns bit into my flesh, tearing through the sleeves of my coat. I felt around blindly in the dark, sharp agony scratching at my wrists. Where is it? My fingers brushed plastic, the binder. I grabbed it and pulled. It was snagged. I pulled harder. Rip. I stumbled back, the binder in my hand. It was damp from the snow, the cover scratched, but intact. Then, a light flicked on upstairs. The master bedroom. Thatcher was awake. I heard the window slide open. Who's there? Thatcher's voice drifted down, thick with sleep and paranoia. I dove flat onto the frozen ground behind the hedge. I pressed my face into the snow. I listened. Probably a raccoon, I heard Alara mumble from inside. Close the window, it's freezing. I heard something, Thatcher said. He stood there for what felt like an eternity. I could see the cherry glow of his cigarette. He flicked the ash into the darkness. It landed inches from my head. Finally, the window slid shut. The light went out. I let out a breath that turned to white mist. I army crawled to the fence, threw the binder over, and vaulted after it. I ran back to the car. I sat in the driver's seat, shaking uncontrollable. Not from cold, from adrenaline. I turned on the map light. I opened the binder. The ledger was dry. The forgery was crisp. I had him. I drove to a lookout point on a hill overlooking the highway. It was 4:30 a.m. The sun was still hours away. I took out my personal cell phone. I dialed Alara. She answered on the second ring. Dad? It's 4:30 in the morning. Is everything okay? No, Alara, I said. My voice was steady, devoid of warmth. Everything is not okay. What happened? Are you in the hospital? I know about Argentum, I said. Silence. Absolute suffocating silence. I know about the loan, I continued. I know about the forgery. And I know about the $112,000 Thatcher stole from Alexei Kozlov to buy that car. Dad. Her voice was a whisper. I don't know what you're talking about. Stop it, I snapped. Do not lie to me, not now. Your life depends on the next 60 seconds. Did you know he was skimming from the Russians? The Russians? She started to cry. He said they were investors. Dad, please. He's in trouble. He's just trying to fix it. He's not trying to fix it, Alara. He's trying to frame you. What? The accounts are in your name, I said. The shell company is yours. The money laundering is yours. When Kozlov comes for his money, who do you think Thatcher is going to point to? The wife who signed everything. He wouldn't, she sobbed. He loves me. Look out the window, I said. Is the Escalade there? Hold on. I heard her fumbling with the phone, footsteps, then a gasp. It's gone. He's running, Alara, I said. He's taking the car, he's taking the cash he has left, and he's leaving you to explain the missing money to the butcher. Oh my God, she wailed. Oh my God, Dad. Help me. I can't help you, I said. Only the truth can help you now. Where is he going? He said he had a meeting. Early, at the airport. Which airport? JFK, Terminal 4. He's flying to... He said he has a connection to the Caymans. Get out of the house, I ordered. Go to a hotel, pay cash. Do not talk to anyone until I call you. Dad, I'm scared. You should be, I said, and I hung up. I picked up the burner. I called Bella. He's on the move, I said. JFK, Terminal 4, heading for the Caymans. I'm on it, Bella said. Her fingers were flying across a keyboard. I could hear the clacking. I'm flagging his passport. DHS, Customs, TSA. I'm tagging him for structuring, wire fraud, and flight risk. The moment he scans his ID, the bells will ring. Good, I said. But that's not enough. I don't want him arrested at the gate. I want him stopped before he gets there. Why? Because if he gets to the airport, he's just another white-collar criminal in a suit. I want him broken. What are you going to do? I'm going to close the other door, I said. I dialed a number I had found in the ledger. It was listed under Emergency K. It rang once. Duh, a deep voice answered. This is a friend, I said. I'm calling to tell you that your employee, Mr. Gray, is resigning." "Who is this?" The voice was cold, dangerous. "He is driving a black Escalade toward JFK," I said. "He has your ledger, and he has the missing 100 grand. The missing—" The voice trailed off. "Check your accounts," I said. "He's skimming, and he's running. If he gets on that plane, your money is gone." I hung up. I had just lit the fuse at both ends. The feds were waiting ahead. The mob was coming from behind. And Thatcher was in the middle, driving a stolen throne. I started my car. I drove to the highway on-ramp that led to the Belt Parkway. I parked on the shoulder, hazard lights flashing, hood popped as if I had engine trouble. I waited. 10 minutes later, I saw it. The black Escalade, weaving through traffic, doing at least 90. He was panicking. I dropped the hood. I got back in the car. I pulled out into traffic. I didn't need to catch him. I just needed to be close enough to watch. I dialed Thatcher's number. I could see his brake lights flare ahead as he wove between a truck and a minivan. He answered. "What?" He was screaming. "Good morning, Thatcher," I said. "Merry Christmas." "Magnus?" He sounded breathless. "I can't talk. I'm busy." "I know," I said. "You're running." "I'm not—" "I have the binder, Thatcher," I said softly. "I have the ledger. I have the forgery." The Escalade swerved slightly in the lane. You stole it," he stammered. "You old freak, you broke into my house." "And I gave it to the feds," I lied. "Homeland Security is waiting for you at Terminal 4. They know about the laundering. They know about the fraud. You won't make it past the curb." "You're bluffing," he cried. "You're a retired nobody." "Am I?" I asked. "Then keep driving. Go to the airport. See what happens." I'll just turn around," he said. "I'll go back. I'll fix this." "You can't go back," I said. I called Kozlov. Silence. The kind of silence that screams. "I told him about the skim, Thatcher. I told him you bought the car with his money. I told him you were running." "No," he whimpered. "No, you didn't." "He has a crew on the highway right now," I said. "If you turn around, you run into them. If you go forward, you run into the feds. You are in a box, Thatcher." And I nailed the lid shut. I watched the Escalade. It slowed down. It moved to the right lane. He was losing his nerve. "What do I do?" he sobbed. "Magnus, please, I'm family, help me." "Family?" I laughed. It was a dry, harsh sound. "You toasted to my death, Thatcher. You tried to steal my home. You set up my daughter to take the fall for the Russian mob. You are not family. You are a target. Please, pull over," I commanded. "Pull over now, and maybe the police get to you before the Russians do." I... Ahead of us on the overpass, I saw the blue lights. Bella had come through. It wasn't DHS. It was the highway patrol, flagged on the APB for a reckless driver suspected of transporting stolen hazardous materials. Bella had a flair for the dramatic. "Game over, Thatcher," I said. The troopers swooped in like hawks. 2 cruisers cut in front of the Escalade, braking hard. 2 more came up behind. Thatcher slammed on his brakes. The massive SUV skidded, smoke pouring from the tires, and came to a halt against the median barrier. I slowed down as I passed the scene. I saw the driver's door open. I saw Thatcher Gray, the man who wanted a future without complications, being dragged out of his $100,000 car onto the dirty asphalt. He was crying. He was begging. I didn't stop. I didn't wave. I just kept driving. "Complication removed," I whispered. 3 days later, The snow had melted into gray slush. The holiday decorations were starting to look tired. My apartment was quiet. The binder was gone, handed over to a contact at the FBI who owed me a favor. The investigation was open. Thatcher was in federal custody, denied bail because of the flight risk. The Russians had gone underground, cutting their losses. There was a knock at the door. Weak, hesitant. I opened it. Ilara stood there. She looked 10 years older. No makeup. No silver dress. She was wearing a tracksuit and holding a designer bag that looked like it contained everything she owned. "Dad," she said. Her voice was cracked. "Ilara," I said. I stood in the doorway. I didn't step back to let her in. "They took the house," she said, tears spilling over. "They seized the accounts. The lawyers said I might be indicted. Conspiracy." "You signed the papers," I said. "I didn't know." "You giggled," I said. She froze. "What?" "At the party," I said. "When he toasted to my death. You giggled. That was the moment, Ilara. That was the moment you decided that my life was worth less than your lifestyle." "I'm sorry," she wept. "I'm so sorry. I have nowhere to go. Please, can I stay here? Just for a while?" I looked at her. My daughter. I remembered teaching her to ride a bike. I remembered her graduation. But I also remembered the signature on the loan. I remembered the silence when I asked for help. "This apartment is small," I said. "It's full of old furniture, baggage." "Dad, don't." "You wanted a future without complications," I said. "Now you have it. You are free of Thatcher. You are free of me. You are on your own." "You're kicking me out?" She looked at me with genuine shock. "But you're my father." "I was your father," I said. "Now I'm just the victim of your fraud." I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a card. It was for a public defender's office. "Call them," I said. "And Ilara, sell the handbag. You're going to need the cash." I closed the door. I heard her crying in the hallway for a minute, then the sound of her footsteps receding toward the elevator. I locked the deadbolt. Click. I walked to the window. I watched her exit the building and walk down the street, head bowed against the wind. I went to the kitchen. I put the kettle on. I took the file on Thatcher Gray, the copy I had kept, and walked over to the shredder. I fed it through, page by page. Whir. The noise was soothing. The debt was paid. The books were balanced. I poured my tea. I sat in my armchair. The room was silent. It was peaceful. I raised my mug to the empty room. "To a future," I said softly, "with no more complications." If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.